Shalom WJC family. It's time for our weekly Torah Talk. This week in Shul we'll be reading Parshat Vayerah with a lot of very famous stories about Sarah and Abraham. But I want to talk about today is the Torah's horror story. Now, I know you may not be familiar that there is a horror genre story in the Torah, because that's not how we tend to teach the Torah. We tend to teach the Torah like it's full of kid stories. But when we think of it a little differently and use our imaginations, you get, crazy stories about outsiders in villages under attack in the middle of the night, as we do in Parshat Vayerah. It's a story, as many horror movies are, about outsiders and insiders and those who understand and those who don't, and some scary personal risk. I, of course, am speaking about the visit that two angels make to the home of Lot and his wife and two daughters who are living in Sdom. And there's a lot of things that, the Sdomites are accused of in later commentaries. In the Torah, they just seem to be evil people, right? Lot, like his uncle Abraham, is welcoming. These two angels come, and Lot welcomes them. Come into my tent. Come, now maybe he's already understands they're in danger, and he's trying to protect them. Maybe he's putting them at risk by bringing them in, but he thinks the value of hachnasat orchim, of hospitality, goes beyond the value of protecting their lives. It's hard to say, but night falls, and suddenly there's noises outside the tent, and there's raging people, and there's, they're armed with, staffs and swords and whatever you would be armed with then, and they come and they demand the strangers be let out so they can do violence upon them, as happens to be the custom of this city of Sdom, right? So what a great horror plot, right? Two people, travelers, they arrive in a city, and then things get weird when it becomes night, and it's scary, and there's suspense. And what's going to happen? What could possibly help them? Lot steps forward in front of these people he has lived among for years, and he says, "Don't do this. They're guests in my house. Leave them alone." And they reply, the people of the town, "This one came to sojourn, right? He's a stranger among us. And now he's going to judge what we do? Now we'll do worse to him than we did to them." And they pressed up to capture Lot and tried to break the door down. So what does this statement mean? He's a stranger among us. He's lived there for a long time, Lot, among the Sdomites. But Rashi says that doesn't really matter. The medieval commentator, he says, that, excuse me, he says, they said, "This man came to sojourn. You are only strange man among us, for you have come to sojourn here. And now you're going to judge us and our people," right? So Lot was always an outsider, right? Lot was an immigrant, a sojourner, and he never quite fit in. And they're saying, "Oh, you're going to judge our customs, you who come from the outside." Avadia ben Sforno says even more. How dare you? His interpretation says. What are they saying? How dare this person? They're shocked. Who would possibly put themselves at risk to protect others? That's what shocks them. That they can't believe that anyone would lay their own safety on the line for someone else, because that is not within their custom. This idea of breaking custom to protect others, and who's in society and who's out of society. It's something that we read about in the Torah, but some things never change. And we can read a lot of history, current and all of Jewish history. Even the Bible itself, as a story about exile, about what it is to live someplace where you didn't start out, right? The Bible starts with the story of the exile from the Garden of Eden and seems to be a story of exile ever after. And no matter what's happening, whether we're in Israel or we're out of Israel or we're sojourning in this land or that land, there always seems to be something different about the Israelites in the Bible. And it's at least one fair reading of Jewish history as well. But not just Jewish history. This fear of outsiders is part of what it is to be human. And every human society, including the one we are currently in, is trying to figure out the right way and the wrong way to respond. And this is not a political video, or at least it's not meant to be, but it is meant to make us think. What are the values that are worth standing up for? What are the ones that we prioritize over others? Sometimes you can't have everything you want. It's just not how the world works, how society works. And so we have to make choices, and every society makes its choices. It's easy to say, well, this society is black, and this society is white, this society is white, and this society is black, and so that one's better than this one's better than that one. But most of human life happens in shades of gray. And our desire to oversimplify, to say this one's in and this one's out, or this one's wisdom is foreign and this one's wisdom is local, or this one belongs and their customs belong, and this one doesn't belong, their customs don't belong. That is something every society has to figure out. And it seems to me that this horror story in the Bible, the horror story of Lot, who ends up fleeing the city as meteor is going to crash into it, basically. Fire and brimstone from the sky. It's trying to highlight for us that these are common pieces of the human condition. And the worst thing to pour onto these questions, inevitably, whether it's for the Sdomites or whether it's for Lot and his wife, or whether it's for the Egyptians when they enslave the Jews, or whether it's for the Israelites later when they conquer the Holy Land, that every time we splash a healthy dose of fear and suspicion and anxiety on top of these questions, what we end up with is a horror story. Perhaps the Torah is trying to tell us what we need to inject in is Abraham and Sarah's value of hospitality, even Lot's value of hospitality. Not that there's no risk to it, because the story clearly says there is, but that is what we bring to the table. That is what the Torah teaches us to bring to the table. Hospitality, understanding, viewpoint diversity, listening, humility. How many times does the Torah say, do this because you were strangers in a strange land? What's the this? I think the this is mitzvot. The this is being kind to others. Not accepting everything as equally good, but also not condemning everything as equally wrong if it's not exactly the same as what we know. And to be brave and courageous like Lot, right? Who would dare challenge the Sdomites? Sometimes we need to dare challenge the general wisdom. And it's hard now. We live in anxious times where people are condemned and canceled and all these kinds of things, and the risk is real. But the charge, at least as I read the story, seems obvious. I wish us all the bravery to just bring good into the world, to bring kindness and humility and the ability to rely on a little bit of God's grace as we come into a beautiful Shabbat. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.